I want you to tell all your friends about me.
What are you?
I'm Batman. I'm Batman.
All right, welcome into another episode of Tigers Radio Podcast here at MotorCityBengals.com and the Tiger Mining Report. I'm Rogelio Castellani alongside Miss Chris Brown and Uper. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartMedia, and Stitcher and Google Play. And Motor City Bengals have been continuing to highlight the minors for reasons that are pretty clear. We'll get to in a second. And please subscribe to the Tiger Mining Report YouTube account, as now we have over 300 subscribers. So I'm pretty again, it's little baby steps, but we're getting there. And we also have a Patreon, patreon.com/Tiger Mining Report. So our guest this evening, and this is the first time we've had him on video, and last year he was kind enough to join us right before he joined Barstool Sports. And I got a chance to meet Chris here at Comerica Park. I think it was like in June. And then the other gentleman from Barstool Detroit had a really good conversation. Mm-hmm. He also co-hosts the Lights and Camera podcast and the Dozen Trivia All-Star, and he still does the Michigan and basketball and football game post-game recaps. And I'm going to ask you about some of the fallout from the Michigan stuff, because I thought some of the people on there were saying you were different, which whatever.
Yeah, it comes with the territory. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. And Chris Castellani, welcome in, and thanks for coming back in, man.
Of course. No, I love being on here, man. You know what, this pod, despite all the nonsense that's going on, this is normalcy to me. You know, like I'm happy spending the next, or I would be happy spending the next 7 months of my life talking about baseball. This is home now. Like the other stuff is, that's what I get paid for. But this is, yeah. Now I appreciate you guys having me on, man. I love it.
Yeah. And when you tweeted about baseball, it just made me think about, just because that has been really an off switch for me. All three of us since recently, and so I try to get into the Pistons. I watched a little bit of the Red Wings, and of course Michigan basketball. But it's just, there's so many different stories with what's going on, especially because with the drama right now with the labor disputes, which today was one of those things where it was another grim day, and you see water carriers like Jim Bowden trying to say the owners, and I say that out flat out. The guy's a crook. He's stolen money before in the past from international players. So I'm not saying anything that nobody else doesn't know, but the whole thing, just every day there's something new that the owners were offended by the players and all this. And I'm just thinking to myself, or how the AP framed the story of Max Scherzer and his Porsche driving.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. What the hell? Come on, like, these guys are paid a certain amount. You think he's going to drive in with a 1995 Ford Contour? Get the hell out of here.
Yeah,
but,
he's not going to pull in a scooter. Like, guys making more money AAV than any pitcher in baseball. I spend it. He's earned it. Yeah, no, I'm with you. Yeah.
So, I'll start with you, Chris. In terms of where you see this right now, there's a lot of going back and forth about the lottery pick for the top 7 picks. In terms of where the MLB is asking for a 14-team playoff versus what the players want, which is 12, which to me, I think 14 seems a little too many, in my opinion. The remainder, like, there's kind of things like where teams don't finish and pay revenue sharing for the bottom 8, so they try to avoid tanking. There's a lot of different elements to it, but which one fascinates you the most in terms of trying to get the deal, getting the deal done, essentially?
Well, one that bothers me a lot is the postseason expansion, because if you want to expand the postseason, okay. I think, to me, it's as simple as just make the wild card round best of 3, because we've seen in the past Bumgarner in 14, Arrieta in 15, in that one game playoff, maybe is not a reflection of how good one team really is. You can have a pitcher go in there and shut a team down. The proposed 14 team playoff expansion with this Cones of Gunshire, like, you can pick and choose who you want to play, and you can decide who's on your roster. And, if you roll the dice, then you get to bat in the first inning before, like, that is nonsense to me. But in general, like, the issues themselves, that's the kind of stuff that, in my opinion, like, much smarter people can figure out. I got a blog coming tomorrow where, like, in an ideal world, I agree with the players pretty much on 95 to 99% of the issues, because I acknowledge the fact that these owners got the money and they can pay for it. But I also think I am pro You got the cones of Dunshire thing, right? No, I mean, I am pro like whatever's going to get us a baseball season at this point, and that's the most frustrating part. I understand and sympathize with everything that the players are fighting for. The biggest detriment here has been the fact that if this season gets delayed, it's what everyone's going to look at. Those 42 days in between lockout and first conversation is what everyone's going to be talking about. What were they doing in between or mid-December all the way through the holidays and into February where nobody was really talking? So I think postseason expansion really is a big one because I think in general of the 4 major sports, most of them have bloated postseasons. The NBA to me has no reason to be 16 teams. Like how many teams in the NBA, even in a year where parity is at its highest, can win a championship? 5, 6. Hockey is a weird one because there's puck luck. I understand that. But even in the NFL, we saw it this year. They expanded it. Like, did the Eagles really deserve to be in the playoffs? Were the Steelers really a playoff team? I think that the issue that that people run into with a 14-team playoff is that it allows the owners to be less aggressive because, hey, we win 84 games, we get into the playoffs, that's a success. That's something that really bothers me because it used to be in baseball to get there, you had to have a really good team. You know, even you look back in recent history, those 4 Tigers teams that won the AL Central consecutively, those were 4 really good teams that fought to get into the postseason. Now it's like, well, hey, 84 wins and we can fight for a spot in a sport in which randomization is at its highest. You know, you can have one bad week and your season's over. That's the one that probably bothers me the most of all the major issues. But I mean, there's so much to sort out here.
So Chris Brown, what about you? I mean, in terms of all the major issues we've talked about this numerous times, but I feel with the postseason, this one, I don't know. I've always thought that having it the way it is now is fine.
Yeah, you know, I tend to agree about the postseason. I think it's one of those things where the players don't particularly care at all. They'll play more postseason games, but they know that the owners really want it, so they're gonna use it as a cudgel. But yeah, I mean, the main concern for me is actually the minimum salary, because that's the one that's going to affect the most players over the largest amount of time. I like the pre-arbitration bonus pool thing is kind of fun and funky, and it'll give us stuff to write about. But the one that actually matters, I think, is the bumping up the minimum salary, which is, I don't know, it's gone up, I don't know, what, $50,000, $60,000, maybe a little bit more than that over the last 2 CBAs. Maybe I'm mistaken. It was, what is it now? 600?
600, yeah. And right now, I think that the players want 650.
I think they want 725 or 750.
725, yeah.
I think it was 775 even.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, that seems to make the most sense to me. It's, in aggregate, it's going to cost a lot of money for the owners, and I think that's why they were not crazy about it. But that's the way to ensure that guys who come up and because the owners, I don't think, are going to go for expanded arbitration. I mean, they may be a little bit, but it's the way to just make sure that guys who come up and play a little bit and have a little bit of an impact for a year or two get, their share of the giant pie that is mostly going to the owners, and then the other half of it, or quarter or whatever, is going too much to veterans, basically. Not that they don't deserve it, but it's just the way it works, with the amount of production you're getting from young players who aren't getting paid for it. It just seems to be more fair to me. But I don't know what the owners, from what I can tell, they haven't really identified the main things they're pushing back against. They just keep saying, we're disappointed. It's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of that. But Uper, real quick before we move on, what were you going to say?
Well, actually, they hit my 2, the same ones. I was going to talk about the minimum salary as well. It really has to go up. I mean, and there's nowhere to go but up if it's going to be any kind of semblance of fairness, because the players who produce are the younger players, and the owners know that, and they're starting to pay older players less. So where does it got to go? It's got to go to the young players. What really I found offensive today, though, I mean, just literally offensive, and I rarely use that word, is evidently the owners said we're out of ideas. Are you kidding me? We're out of ideas. They've negotiated in good faith. How many sessions went more than 10 minutes? And you're telling me these are some of the smartest businessmen and women in America, and they're out of ideas. I mean, that's insulting to all of us. I really couldn't believe it when I saw that.
Yeah, that's one of those things where I as somebody just absorbs reading communications and seeing the PR of it, how do they go and put stuff out there and go, oh, that's okay. I mean, there's to me the whole thing since the started, it looks like the owners just do not, like, if it's out there, like, oh, okay, that's cool. Like, they do not think about the how they're portrayed, but yet there's fans out there who are still blaming the players somehow. And that, to me, that's the part I just blows my mind. Like, how are you going to blame the players when they are the ones waiting for an agreement? And the entire time, were they having like a siesta or something? I don't know, but it just, to me, the specifics on the competitive balance aspect or using WAR also falls into a tricky situation. And to me, that's where you're going to see a young player, for example, like when they were talking about, all of a sudden it just seemed out of nowhere, the news that Juan Soto rejected a $350 million contract seemed convenient enough to drop that as they're talking about that. And to me, you see that almost that narrative, that the BS narrative. Well, the players are getting paid too much and ... Well, you guys are the ones that drove the price up in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
You guys created this. And the only thing the Players Association has not done in the last couple of agreements is continue to see their money raised up while their salaries getting raised up while baseball's continue to make money. So,
well, and they were more than happy to see Ozzie Albies and Ronald Acuna Jr. sign contracts, which even at the moment they were signed looked completely under market, and wonderful deals for the owners. And then to come out and, try to say, well, Soto is trying to jack us for money, and he's a greedy player. That's a joke as well.
Yeah. So, but moving on to other than that, one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, Chris, was in terms of, we've seen the Tiger minor league camp right now. You see Spencer Torkelson, Riley Green, Ryan Kreidler, just everybody out there on display. There was, of course, one of those things where you have to get in the mindset of going, okay, it's spring training, calm down, folks,
right.
Those kind of things. But either way, what have impressions, I mean, from what you've seen out there so far, have really kind of stuck out to you?
Look, for all the criticism that the front office has taken, and trust me, I mean, I've at many points have been like, Eli Roth and Inglourious Bastards with the baseball bat, just hammering these guys. I think they have done a tremendous job of developing a lot of their young talent. I mean, these are their money beats. Like, they cannot afford to fall or fail with Green and Torkelson. And you watch, I mean, really what we've seen is batting practice. But at the same time, I mean, you look at the big picture. I think that the development of Riley Green up to this point, who knows what he's going to turn into, has exceeded expectations. I mean, especially when you draft a high school player, sometimes you get a guy who turns out to be this generational guy, but sometimes you get someone whose body doesn't grow and who doesn't develop as a player. I mean, it's excitement. I mean, I think that this is the year where everyone is really kind of waiting on pins and needles, because they are both going to be here really, really soon. And I feel this way about these guys, and I feel this way about the team, where when people ask, what are these guys going to be like? What's the team going to be like? What's the organization going to be like? And the way I stand right now is nothing has deterred me from believing that either one of these guys, and this includes Kreidler and Dylan Dingler, are going to be really good major league players. I think that they have grown through the minor leagues. Torkelson, especially, because Green at least had that small window in 2019. And in the long run, I think Green will be the better major league player. But Torkelson's development had the potential to be completely messed up. I mean, he was drafted into 2020, no minor league season, right? Last year, in one minor league season, he went from high A to double A to triple A. I mean, I don't, even if you're a number one pick or not, that's a pretty remarkable ascension, which lends credence to the fact that this guy is a really legitimate generational hitter. So, I mean, from what I've seen, it's very exciting. I believe both of them will be here early this season once we play a season. And while I the last thing I want to see is this season getting delayed, from a major league standpoint. I think it could, for these guys, be a benefit because I think they're going to tear it up in spring ball. And let's say we play a 150, 140 game season. The odds potentially starting the year on the major league roster goes up, I feel like, with, fewer major league games. Maybe I'm being optimistic with that, but I like watching them go to work and not just in terms of character, but in terms of talent. It seems like the organization is incredibly happy with their development, and I think the fans should be too.
Yeah, especially when you look at the way Torque started the season last year at West Michigan, where he's kind of struggled, but then for how many games we went to, Chris, last year, I remember we were talking about all of a sudden he started going to the right field in Toledo, and at first it was a disaster, and then it was like just authority, just boom, 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 and to see him make those adjustments. And as for Riley Green's concerned, last year when we had him as number one prospect, it was originally, so well, what about Torque? Until I saw Torque go, even in Erie, just continue to make like adjustments. Same thing with Green. They're more receptive on new technology. You've seen it. They have the blue wall that's going on down in Lakeland. There's a lot of things, and I've watched this team for a long time, and I try. Everybody always kind of gives me some kind of grief. Well, you're too negative and blah, blah, blah. Well, I call it the way I see it. I'm objective as possible. But it's, for once, the first time since, I hate to say this, Chris, even if we were born,
you're right, though. You're right. I mean, as good as this organization has been at points, the last time they had a farm system with a core like this was the late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah.
Which took them to a World Series in 84. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know. It's just kind of, and even for like Uper and Chris here, but Chris, one of the Brown, I was going to ask you in terms of all the footage you've been seeing, all that, like, the best shape of his life stories. Have you seen anything that stands out to you so far?
Well, I will say that one kind of silver lining of this labor strife is this minor league minicamp, and the fact that we've had a couple of the beat writers be able to go down there, and they're covering these guys in much more depth than they would normally, because normally they'd be chasing down Casey Mize and Tarek Skubal and all that stuff to see what they've been doing. And so now we're getting stories on everybody from Jackson Jobe and Ty Madden to AJ Ladwig to, Manuel Sequeira and Christian Santana. And so it's I don't know, it's been fun to watch. I think today Evan Petzold had video of Reese Olson pitching against, Kreidler and Torkelson and Green. And we've seen, it was fun the other day when Job got taken deep by Sequeira, and it's just fun to see that stuff. So I don't know. I wouldn't say that anything has really jumped out. I think I shared with you, we shared with each other, Rogelio, that our various insiders have told us extremely positive things about Jackson Jobe, that to the point where the Tigers are even more excited about him than they were when they drafted him. So, what we could take from that, I don't know at this point, but that's it's exciting to hear, and it's just kind of cool to see some of these dudes go out there and play against each other.
Yeah, that's the best part. I mean, we're so desperate for baseball right now. We started watching a little bit of college, and I know that Chris and I are kind of nerds about that kind of stuff. As I spent the whole DVR watching Michigan baseball this weekend. But speaking of Michigan sports, now the whole Juwan Howard situation, I know there's between you both, Chris, both Chris's have some different takes on this, but the whole situation just looked like first and foremost, it looked like a punch over the top. It wasn't like a straight shot anyway. But secondly, Michigan at Wisconsin, it's like the Tigers playing in Oakland or Anaheim. It just never seems to work out.
Yeah.
But the vibe of the game, Chris, go ahead and talk about that, and talk about just the whole scene and how that all worked out.
Well, what's weird about that game is, and this is a little, inside baseball for you, is, I do my post games after every Michigan basketball game, like I do with the Tigers. And I recorded that video with about a minute 30 left in the game because the game was over. And it was like the line on Twitter, it was like closing. It was about 99% of the way there. And then Juwan decided to slap a guy, and I had to delete it and start over because the story became what happened in the post game. And it's ironic because they lost that game. They didn't play particularly well. Wisconsin was a better. Whoa.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good. Wisconsin is a better team than Michigan, but Michigan had 2 road games that week, one at Iowa, one at Wisconsin. They needed to win one. They won one. Obviously, you never want to lose any game, but I was ready to wipe my hands clean of that week and say, okay, they're still relatively on track if they take care of business, which, big question mark, to make the tournament. And then that happened. It made me very sad because, and trust me, I've gotten enough responses by people talking about this, but I like Juwan Howard. And I think that what happened on Sunday is not a reflection of the kind of person or coach that Juwan Howard is. And that's what frustrated me is I think that he's better than that. And I think his players are better than that. And we saw against Rutgers the way they responded. Rutgers is good, and Michigan beat them pretty darn bad. And they rallied around Phil Martelli. It was a very unfortunate and I'll say embarrassing moment, but I don't believe that it is a reflection of the kind of person that Juwan Howard is. And I said this, I don't know if I said this in my blog, but I'm glad he didn't get fired. He should not have been fired because I'm a firm believer in second chances and rehabilitation. We're all Tigers fans, obviously. How many people were adamant that the Tigers shouldn't have hired AJ Hinch, right? This guy's a cheater. This guy disgraced the game. This guy should never be managing in baseball ever again. And it's been a year and a half since he was hired, and he's the best manager in baseball. The media likes him. We like him. He did a tremendous job a season ago. In terms of preparation, I don't think there's anyone in baseball better. That's an example of a guy who screwed up, rehabilitated, and has gone on to do wonderful things. I feel that way about Juwan. I don't believe that this is a reflection of who Juwan is, and I think it will be a wonderful story if 4 or 5 years from now, we see what Michigan basketball becomes. Now, with that said, if this happens again, whether it's next year or 3 years from now, you got to fire him. You cannot allow this. You cannot allow this to happen ever again. Regardless of the personal feelings I have about the guy, you cannot have a coach that on multiple occasions has essentially assaulted another coach and allow him to retain his position. So that's where I stand on it. But it's been pretty exhausting this week on Twitter and in social media. Yeah,
especially because some of these fans are ridiculous. But one of the things I liked about what you said in your article that was true, and this is I think something Chris Brown could even attest to it, that it's just we can't talk about the football team anymore because of the coach going back and forth, and that whole last paragraph, because, even the best line, you can't discuss guys who have worked their asses off like Eli Brooks and Hunter Dickerson. Right. And you're right, because it just seems like the story is either whether it's Jim Harbaugh, and in this case, Juwan Howard, but not because he wanted to be the story, obviously, but it is frustrating to the point where it's just, you forget some of the accolades, and especially Michigan basketball has struggled this season and has not built what they're supposed to be doing, but enough is enough. And it's just it just takes away from what potentially could be a good season.
And what's sad. And that's why last night to me was, outside of the Purdue game, maybe their best performance of the season, is you got a week where you are mired in controversy. And one thing that goes overlooked is Dickinson in the post game for Wisconsin. You could tell he was tired of this. Like, I don't want to answer questions about this. Like, I put up 17-7. What do you people want from me? And you know what they did last night? They went out and beat a really good Rutgers team. And that shut a lot of people up. And I feel this way about Juwan. I feel this way about Harbaugh. Despite all the controversy and nonsense, when you get W's instead of L's, it solves everything. Like, as much as insane as this offseason has been for Michigan football, if they go 12-1 next season again, no one's going to care that he almost went to Minnesota. Like, they're going to celebrate another Big Ten championship. The winning solves everything, and that's what happened last night. And that's why I'm really happy for Martelli, and I'm really happy for the players for how they responded to the controversy.
Now, Chris Brown, I know you were tweeting and you got some crap for what you said, but what's your angle on this?
Yeah, so I was actually, when all that went down, I was sledding in the front yard with my son, So as he would go down, I would check my phone and I saw everything that was going down, and then I saw clips and I'm like, oh my God, that looks absolutely terrible. Like I wasn't watching the game. I saw it from Twitter and I just said, I think he should resign because, and I think there are a couple aspects of that for me. One of it was from a decade plus or whatever of watching John Beeline, like the gentlest man on earth. I think he got thrown out of one game ever, and it was like, what? And that's not to say that Juwan, I think, is a great coach. He's just a little bit more fiery, and I've seen him. He went at Mark Turgeon last year, I think it was, and he's had a couple games this year where he absolutely loses it on the refs, and that's totally fine. But I just thought, and there's also something like I felt like there was just a tinge of the Malice at the Palace flashback for me, where something about basketball makes it seem worse to me. And I had to, had I waited another day or two, I probably wouldn't have, said anything about him getting fired or resigning or whatever. I think what ended up happening was fine. A suspension and then the school going over and saying, hey, we can't accept this. It's totally fine. But yeah, there's something like if it had happened between two hockey coaches and there's gloves involved, I don't think I would have cared as much. And if it's football, there's helmets, and even, baseball, we see coaches, was it, Pedro and Don Zimmer, but something about basketball, made it seem more real and dangerous to me. And I don't know if that's going back to the Malice at the Palace or me just, seeing it for what I was and overreacting. And I think, and it's also probably a lot of frustration on my part. And the same reason that Juwan Howard is frustrated is this is a really talented team that just hasn't been what we expected it. They were top 5, I think, or top 10.
I think they were 5 preseason. Yeah.
And it turns out that they, the freshmen aren't quite what they expected. Mm-hmm. And, you can't, we've seen that with Kentucky, these teams that have these amazing, even you see Memphis this year, these teams with these amazing recruiting classes, and sometimes it doesn't gel. And basically Michigan lives and dies on shooting, and it's been super inconsistent this year, and they don't really have any wings, which is something that I guess we just took for granted last year, that they had 3 NBA level wings on the team. Right. Franz Wagner might be the rookie of the year. Shondy Brown's been in the league a little bit this year, and Isaiah Livers is back and forth. But so I don't know. It's just been a frustrating season for Juwan and for fans, and I think I overreacted, and so did Juwan, and here we are. We're all back together now. Juwan finally apologized. Wisconsin has done no apologizing. It's been kind of super annoying.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess I will apologize too. But I also deleted my tweets because I tend to delete 95% of my tweets that aren't about baseball, just because I feel like anybody who follows me on Twitter is not there for that.
No, dude, you and me both, man. I mean, I don't blame any person who watched the raw footage and said this guy should be fired. People do that all the time, and it drives me nuts on social media. Opinions are actually fluid and can change. What you say in the moment is not actually a reflection of what people feel years from now, months from now. So no, I'm with you completely. And I think that, when you look at that moment, it's funny you brought up Pedro and Don Zimmer, because I was talking to somebody last week where Pedro Martinez literally assaulted a senior citizen. And I could be wrong. I don't think he got suspended a game for it. No. It's a weird thing how that works. And now I'm not by any means justifying what Juwan did, but at the same time, I do think that it's a prime example of the culture change where this has become more heightened than it should. And I don't blame it. I was literally, because of how instantaneous my videos are, I was the first person to be like, yeah, you got to suspend him. This can't, you got to send a message that he can't do this again. And I know the players love him, and I know the fans are appreciative of him. I do think he'll grow from this. I do think he'll learn, and I really hope this doesn't happen again, because I want him to be the coach here.
Yeah, and I just to think about part of it is just the way we've changed as a sports culture in the last. There was no Twitter when Don Zimmer came at Pedro, and also Don Zimmer was apologetic and crying afterwards, saying that he made the mistake, he went after him and stuff like that. And I recall Twitter was around for the Armando Galarraga, Jim Joyce thing, but I wasn't on it at the time. And I have to believe that there were a bunch of people probably calling for Jim Joyce to be flayed and salted.
Oh, no question.
And you calm down after a little bit, but everybody gets emotional because it's sports. That's why we follow it. If we didn't care about it, then we wouldn't watch. So,
Speaking of, by the way, two ex-Tigers, there's David Wells, and the guy at the bat was Kareem Garcia, who was the Tigers outfielder in, I believe that he came over in 96, 97. From the Diamondbacks. So yeah, and here it is. The reason why I'm watching this because it's been a while since I watched it. And I've always thought that was kind of more like a Olay thing versus a actual assault. And of course, I didn't cue it up right, so it's gonna take a minute here. But
right, it just all sport. Like you remember how much this is again, Chris. This is before your time. Red Wings fans absolutely hated Chris Chelios.
Oh yeah,
when he was with the Blackhawks, and then he came to the Red Wings and was like, "Hey, he's all right now." And even like more recent, like remember when Mickey and Austin Romine got in a fight?
Exactly. Yeah. They were teammates
the team, like
3 years later. Yeah.
Yeah, and Pedro apologized, and they both moved on. It was a heat of the moment kind of thing, and the tensions are high, and for two teams that don't even like each other. But yeah, for Juwan Howard and for Michigan, what you said about Jim Harbaugh to me cracked me up because I'm sick of it. I'm seriously like just enough is enough, man. Like your offensive coordinator, or who was it that left? That was just like basically.
It was Gaddis. It was Gaddis.
It was the OC.
Yeah. No, it's really a tough thing because everyone thinks I don't like Jim Harbaugh. Like Jim Harbaugh, I'm done with the Jim Harbaugh circus. I feel this way about the labor negotiations. I feel this way about coaching. Move. I like watching the sport and talking about the sport. The other nonsense does not appeal that much. So like. Michigan football had a wonderful season last year. And that week after beating Ohio State and then going to, I was in Indy, that was amazing. And then that month long, is he going, a sequence there, which ended with him interviewing with Minnesota, not getting it was just such nonsense. And then you lose two coordinators. It's like that was rough. But, again, I go back to it. It's like no one's going to remember this in several months if they beat the Buckeyes again and the Big Ten again. But you got to now they've built that pressure up again where you lose pretty quickly because of the way this offseason has gone.
Yeah. I go ahead, Chris.
Well, I would just say that there were certain aspects of sports that I used to pay attention to a lot more closely. I used to get really into the college football recruiting. And the NFL draft, and I treat Jim Harbaugh stuff the same way. Where now I go, you know what? If I don't pay attention to this, it's still going to happen anyway. So I'll just wait for it to finish. And so I just ignore. I will go with my buddies and hang out and watch the first round of the NFL draft. But then I'll check in 2 days later and say, oh yeah, well, look what they did. That's fun. And yeah, so that's where I am with Harbaugh. The dude is super quirky and annoying and. I just stopped following him and wait for things to settle down. And now they're doing spring practice now, which I also am not paying attention to, but I know it's happening.
I can't believe it's during spring practice already. But so one of the big things I wanted to talk to Chris about was the Batman, which is coming out next week. And one of the things that when it was the same kind of reaction when Heath Ledger was announced as the Joker, Robert Pattinson, what? He can't play Batman. He was in Twilight, blah, blah, blah. Same, BS kind of crap with uninformed information. And Robert Pattinson has done some really good work. He did that movie. Yeah. Well, that movie I watched with William Dafoe, the
Lighthouse.
Yeah. Fantastic. That movie exceeded my expectations. And he's grown on me a little bit. And I just watched a movie with another guy who has the same kind of, he typecast a little bit. Andrew Garfield. I just watched The Eyes of Tammy Baker. He was fantastic in that movie. He did a really good job of being Jim Baker. So for you, Chris, the Batman is supposed to be 2 hours and 35 minutes. Is that
55?
55. Oh,
it's a 3-hour movie. It's a mini series essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. So in terms of how it's shot and everything, what are you looking forward to the most? And then we're gonna get into the other Batman movies in here. What are you looking forward to about this movie?
Well, I mean, two things. One, I'm a huge fan of Matt Reeves. I think Matt Reeves is one of the best directors working right now. I think when you go he went from Cloverfield to Let Me In to, I think the Planet of the Apes trilogy, in which he did two of them, the last two, is masterful. Legitimately, in terms of Hollywood films, is better than Hollywood. I mean, in terms of the themes, the cinematography, the fact that you take a bunch of characters that don't speak essentially, and you make a 2.5-hour movie out of them, I think is incredible. But I've been on board for a while thinking that I think Pattinson post Twilight is the best actors working right now. And people say I'm crazy for that, but part of it too, like the Twilight series and the Star Wars prequels are cut from the same cloth, where I don't blame any of the actors for their bad performances in those movies. Like Liam Neeson is a freaking amazing actor. Samuel L. Jackson is a great actor. Ewan McGregor is a great actor. Natalie Portman is amazing. And they all kind of give like bad performances in the prequels. Like Kristen Stewart is about to win an Oscar for playing Princess Diana, and she's not good in the Twilight movies, like at all. So I don't blame him for that. But having watched The Lighthouse and Good Time and Devil All the Time, I think that he's going to bring something really amazing to that role. But even beyond that, outside of the Joker, the Riddler is my favorite Batman villain. And one thing I love about the Riddler is the fact that the Riddler is a pest and he's just a nuisance. And Paul Dano to me is like, that casting is, it's chef's kiss. It's perfect. Like that guy, I once had I can't take credit for this, once described him as an actor as, the quote was, moist and amphibious. And when I watch him in Prisoners, and when I watch him in There Will Be Blood, I'm like, wow, what an amazing description of that. Like, I think that if you're going to have a guy who's going to go around Gotham planting puzzles and trying to mess with our hero, I don't think you can do any better. Now, like, the thing is, the hype is there, and I've been looking forward to this for years. I'll be objective about it. I always am, but I think the pieces are in place for this to be really, really special. And this is a character, like there's one of those things, like if you're doing things, and it shows where my perspective lies in life. If you're doing a hierarchy of things that matter the most to me, you're talking Tigers baseball, and somewhere in that top 5 is Batman. Like, I get very, very honest and real when it comes to how my Batman is portrayed. It's something that I've grown up with since I was 3 years old, and I have the versions that I care about. I have the versions that I adamantly disavow, but I think they have something here. Early buzz is that, it's really, really good. I think it's going to be a massive hit, and I'm just truly, I'm ready for. I mean, dude, this thing's been delayed a million times because of COVID. So at this point, like, just give it to me. Like, I'm ready to see it, whether I like it or love it. So be it. But I'm ready to be objective and talk about it. Yeah.
Especially, Paul Dano. I don't know about you guys, but when I saw him in There Will Be Blood, in that whole sequence in the bowling alley, I was just literally going, yeah, get him, right. Son of a bitch, die.
And it's funny because Daniel Day-Lewis is such garbage in that movie too. Yeah. Like, he's not a good guy at all, and yet you still get to the end of that movie, and he's like, hit him again, do it again. Yeah.
Paul Dano. I don't know if you guys saw Little Miss Sunshine.
Oh, he's so great in where he takes the
He
vow
has
of silence.
So many scenes where he doesn't even talk, but he kills the scene just by his presence and the faces that he makes and the nonverbal interaction he has with some of those characters. That's a little movie, but man, he was, and it wasn't even a really big part, but he was a great part of that movie.
No, I think it's perfect casting, honestly. Yeah.
And I think objectively, Batman is the coolest superhero. I don't think.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
I think. What's interesting is when I think back. So the first Batman movie was an absolute phenomenon when I was a kid. Like that came out when I was 9, I think 8 or 9. But I wasn't. I was a kid, so I didn't. I'm sure people were like, Michael Keaton is playing Batman. Like he had just done Beetlejuice, which was kind of different and interesting. But before that, he was like Gung Ho, Mr. Mom, Johnny Dangerously. Like he was a stand-up comedian. So. But that one, I mean, that was just that was what's the director? I've gone and blanked out. Tim Burton. Yeah, but before he was a parody of himself, he was still doing kind of some interesting things. And you Jack Nicholson, you got was Tommy Lee Jones in that one too, or was that's
a famous controversy. Billy D. Williams.
That's right. Yeah, and
Harvey Dent, which I think he would have been great as Two-Face, but we never saw him, that opportunity. Yeah,
and you have Prince doing the soundtrack. Like it was massive. And before that, the only superhero movies that I remember were like the Supermans.
Yeah,
there were, and the first 2 Supermans I remember being pretty good. Was the third one with Richard Pryor? I don't remember.
3 and 4 are brutal. With the fourth one where he steals the world's nukes and
Yeah.
throws him into the
That's
sun.
fun.
And that's
I-
always a
Oh,
nuclear
man.
man. Yeah.
I saw that at the theater when I was a kid, and it was I was like, this is no good.
Right. Yeah.
But so yeah, Batman changed the game, and then when Raj and I were kids, the Batman animated series was just about the best thing on TV after school.
Yeah.
And,
I've been watching it lately. That is still 30 years later. Outside of the Nolan films, is my favorite version of the character. I like what they do, like, and it carried over into the Arkham games as well. Where like outside, people ask me who my favorite Batman is, and I have an answer. But as a geek, my favorite Batman, Kevin Conroy. What like that voice is like the definitive, like, this guy will break you, like break every bone in your body, but at the same time be the suave playboy, Bruce Wayne. I still want it holds up remarkably well for a superhero series in the early 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, because you look at something like X-Men, for example, that came out in the early 90s. That's awful. I'm sorry. Like, I used to be a pump for
with
X-Men.
the cartoon.
Yeah, the X-Men cartoon, but now it just aged so badly because it reminded me of the 70s versions of the Super Friends, and it's just that version of it. But the one thing about the Batman the Animated Series was the creation of, had I known what I know now about what happened to be with Harley Quinn, it's one of those things where you think about it now. I'm not gonna lie, I like the Harley Quinn DC cartoon that just came out a couple of years ago. That's on HBO. That's kind of more R-rated. But the whole premise behind Harley Quinn and how the origin story came up in the animated series was so fantastically well done, and just kind of shows how. But it also gave a different dimension to the Joker to me, in a sense that the Joker is just how manipulative he could be. And how brutal he was, because one of the things, the first thing I remember about Batman as the comic books is they had a Batman, they had a comic book that decided whether the Robin would die. It was a second Robin. It was Jason Todd.
It's Jason Todd, right? They did like a fan vote, didn't they?
Yeah, they did a fan vote. Yeah, and it was like really close apparently. And the way they did the graphic for it and the way they did the drawing of it in the comic was so brutal. The fact that like Joker just did not give a flying leap and just beat him, but the reason why I mentioned the Joker with Harley Quinn is because the way he can manipulate and control people, and not a true sociopath. And even with the Killing Joke, which they did a really good job with the animated one, but I would love to see that some way in a live action thing. But anyway, that's why I like the animated series, because it allowed a recreation, before DC now does like a new universe every 5 years, it seems like now, in the comic books. But yeah, it took the show and those in the character like Harley Quinn to a different. I mean, everybody dressed up like Harley Quinn last 3 or 4 Halloweens, I'm assuming. So
right, yeah, it's the biggest female Halloween costume. Yeah.
But I don't know, Youper, in terms of Batman, before we get into the little older movies, have you seen the previews for it? Because
it looks pretty exciting, no question about it. I think it'll be fun. But as Chris was saying, it's been delayed so many times. I just want to see it.
Yeah.
And let's just have it and see what we got.
So let's start with so I wanted to go in a little bit of the history of the movies, the original Batman, like the Michael Keaton Batman 1, Batman Returns. In terms of where you stood with Michael Keaton, Chris, what's your thoughts about him? Did he set the mold for everything else to come to you?
I think he was remarkably surprising in terms of how he portrayed the role. Because even to this day, and I love Michael Keaton, I still look at him and say, man, I don't see it, but he's such a versatile actor that he made it work. I thought he was an excellent Batman. And that's where, again, I break this down all the time. There's that duality. I thought he was an excellent Batman. His Bruce Wayne was a little bit too unassuming for my taste, but I think in general, we've seen good Batman and we've seen bad Batman, but he did a great job of being one of the first actors to take a role like that and really take it seriously. I remember feeling, because kind of my version of those superheroes is what Tobey Maguire did with the first Spider-Man, where like, whoa, an actor can take this role and get shredded in super good shape, read the comics, understand the character. I think he did a great job of that. Any issues I had with his portrayal had nothing to do with him as an actor. Like, one of my big things, again, if we're doing a power rankings of things I care about, I do not like when Batman kills. That's a big problem of mine. Now, that has nothing to do with Michael Keaton. Michael Keaton is servicing the script. Like, he can't change what's written. He does kill a few times. In fact, like in the original Batman, he just grabs Jack Nicholson and says, "I'm going to kill you," which to me is not a reflection of what that character is, but that's not his fault. I think that he set the mold of people being like, well, you can take a role like this, hate, and look at it the way that an actor takes a role and not just like, well, I'm just going to play a hero. He actually, took the time to study kind of the separate personalities. And I mean, as I have issues with both those Michael Keaton movies, but they're really well directed. And the opening scene of, the I'm Batman scene it's perfectly done. And I think a big reason for it is because Michael Keaton has that ability to take a role and just make it his own. And so while it's not my favorite portrayal of the character, it's maybe the most important because it kind of broke the mold as to what a portrayal of a superhero could actually be.
So Chris Brown, where would you stand with the Batman, your favorite Batmans, what have you?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, that first one was kind of, it like I said, it was like a touchstone of my youth. I do remember the second one. I went to a kid's birthday party and we all watched it. And there was one other kid who was there who had apparently seen like a teaser on HBO. And it was called like The Cat, the Bat, and the Penguin or something like that. And every time, like he was chiming in with bloops, like every 2 minutes. Like, oh, I was watching In the Cat, the Bat, and the Penguin. He said the title of this little thing every time he mentioned it. And it stuck in my head forever because I was like, good Lord, you don't have to say the title every time. Like, we get it. You saw this preview. Okay, you don't have to say that. But yeah, I don't think I've seen that second one a ton just because it was big too. And, Danny DeVito is, crazy and that. Yeah. I'm sure I saw the third one with Jim Carrey, but I don't think I've ever gone back to watch it. And I've never seen the fourth one with Schwarzenegger.
You know what? You've saved yourself so much time, my friend. You have saved yourself trauma and time. You are living a better life than anyone on this podcast right now. I'll tell you.
Well, yeah, but the Nolan trilogy was obviously very good, and the Dark Knight is a spectacular movie. But I also think I told you, Roger, I didn't see. The only time I saw Affleck as Batman was in the original Justice League cut. Like I didn't see the Snyder cut or whatever. So that's basically what I'm coming at. And I'm interested about this new one because I've seen trailers a little bit, but I've been kind of staying away because I just like to be sort of surprised. But to me, and I know this isn't like Chris was saying, it's you got to do service to what the script is and the way a character is written. But I feel like a real Batman would be an absolute psychopath, and he should be portrayed that way. Like not necessarily killing people, but like if you're a billionaire and you're dressing up to go out and fight bad guys, something's wrong with you.
Right. Well, and that's one thing. If you've watched, and maybe you haven't watched the clips, but in the clips I've watched, one thing Pattinson has stressed is this Bruce Wayne is a weirdo. He's a strange, reclusive guy because if you are a billionaire who says, I'm going to dress up like a rodent and beat people almost to death on a nightly basis, you can't be like well adjusted. And I love, dude, the Dark Knight trilogy. Like that's like my Star Wars. Like I love those movies to death. But if there's one thing about those movies that did bother me is that Christian Bale right away had the duality down. Like, okay, this is what I got to do. Like if you're learning to be Batman, early on, you're going to have a lot of faults. So when you watch these clips, it's very clear that like Pattinson, this guy, like his version of Bruce Wayne, he's not all there because he shouldn't be. I mean, he dresses up like a Batman and destroys people. So yeah, I'm excited about that. Yeah.
But one of the things that I've noticed throughout history, Chris, and both you guys, and there's something about who goes away, train with a bunch of ninjas in the mountain somewhere and doesn't tell anybody. Those are some of the things that you pick up on some of the various animated cartoons, but even in the Nolan movies, like who decides to go, yeah, you know what? It's cool. I'm just going to do this and I'm going to train in the League of Shadows in this organization that no one knows about. And yet even the Ra's al Ghul angle too. I think what I'm looking forward to this movie, and you guys, you hit it right in the head, nail on the head, is that, okay, he isn't right. And they found a way to normalize it before that. Oh yeah, training with the League of Shadows is cool, or they make it kind of like part of his whole process. But grief can only take you so far. I get that his parents died, but I'm just glad for once they're not starting with that narrative because we know it. It's been told 1,000 times, but I just not that angle of him just being a little out there is you guys have hit it. It's fantastic, and it should not normalize what he's done before. Even when he gets his back broken in the comic book, the guy Azrael who takes over for Batman starts killing people, and Batman's like, no.
Yeah.
And essentially that Batman was like, look, I'm just doing what you would have not done and just clean my hands of it.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I appreciate the idea of somebody who can, blend in with society and be a normal person and then go out at night and be somebody different. But yeah, to me, like, and I don't need superhero movies to be realistic at all. That's fine. I don't, but it just, to me, like the idea that like somebody who goes out at night dressed up like a bat and beats the shit out of people is not that much different than like a billionaire who takes prisoners to an island and hunts them for sport. It's not that far away. Like there's just a little tiny line between. So I don't know, but whatever. It's fun to watch. So that's all I really care about.
Entertaining. I can forgive a lot of things. Like The Dark Knight is probably, when push comes to shove, my favorite movie of all time. But there are, Christopher Nolan does this a lot, where there are logical lapses in judgment that you kind of have to accept, but you do it for the sake of entertainment. So I'm for that reason, it's why I'm looking forward to this and why I forgive a lot of things that happen in the Dark Knight trilogy. They're just really entertaining, heartfelt movies.
Let me ask you guys this question. Mm-hmm. Do we suppose any Batman villains are millionaires?
The Penguin? I always thought the Penguin had
I would say the Penguin. It's now in the Dark Knight, it's established after the bank robbery that the Joker has a substantial amount of money to afford the amount of goons that he has. But that's a really good question. If there's any other Batman villains, I guess, okay, if we're really doing a deep dive, the character of Clayface was a movie star at one point in his life, meaning that he probably, fell into a fair amount of wealth, but I can't think of any other Batman villain who, from a monetary standpoint, matches Bruce Wayne. Now, I guarantee 5 minutes after this podcast ends, I'm going to think of like 3, but I can't right now. Off the bat, that would match him from a wealth perspective.
Well, I mean, Ra's al Ghul. I thought Ra's al Ghul would be up there because
it was just a stupid question for me to say millionaires versus billionaires. That's all.
No.
No, but bringing it back around. No, that's the way to go, man. But the Batman versus villains was the ultimate labor negotiations. It really was. It was one side versus the other. That's the way it's always been.
A competitive beating tax.
Exactly.
And I was glad that you brought up. I'm a video game, like my day job. I write about video games, and so I also argue that those Arkham games are probably the best superhero games ever.
Okay.
With apologies, maybe the Spider-Man game was pretty darn good, but those Batman games were it's like a 3D Metroidvania that was just it was great combat, great puzzles, all that good stuff. They were really good.
The Batman Arkham City. I was a sophomore in high school when that came out, and it was a week. Little story time here. It was a week after my high school tennis season had ended my sophomore year. We were state runner-ups at Lansing Catholic in 2011, and I came out of those next 3 weeks with a beard, and I was 16 years old because I basically locked myself in the basement and just played that game. I collected every single one of those dumb Riddler trophies because I was so obsessed with the storyline of that game. I really, honestly, if I'm all for adapting video games into movies because I think it's a thing, but truly, if you wanted to make an Arkham City mini series at some point, I would be all for it. The story in those games is so tight and so rich. What's cool about them too, to me, those are the conclusions to the animated series. And I love the animated series, but we never really got a series finale. But you have Conroy back as Batman, you have Ham back as the Joker, and you have Bruce Timm and Paul Dini writing them. So I always view them as this is the actual conclusion to that series that we never really got a conclusion to, which makes it that much more awesome. I could play those games forever. I think they're awesome. Yeah.
That was that first Batman that came out was just something it was the first time I sat down and not off my couch and forced myself to play since Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, which was my first game in high school. That you're talking about, you growing a beard, the same thing. I was a cross country runner in high school. Mm-hmm. When that game came out, or that's actually I was thinking of Final Fantasy VII, but when Knights of the Republic came out, and I was in early college, sorry, but Final Fantasy VII came out, same thing. I was a runner, and it was just one of those things where I literally the game tracker hours, how many hours you played in Final Fantasy, and it was like 26, 27, and then I go to school thinking I was, some hot shit or whatever, and there's guys like, oh, 39, 40 hours in my head. I'm like, fuck, geez.
Yeah.
But Knights of the Republic I was working at Best Buy and came home. I had the weekend off. Sometimes it's just go Friday to Sunday playing that game on my Xbox. Oh man, it was anyway, but it was one of those games, even with the way it was drawn too. Sometimes I thought it was too dark, but then I just adjusted the light on my TV, some of those Batman games. But either way, I'm stoked for the movie. I'm glad that you talked about this. And fun fact about Matt Reeves, if you are Chris, Brown, you might remember this. Now, I don't know about you, Chris, both guys, but he actually co-created Felicity.
Yeah. Yeah, that was one of his big things too. I mean, he's had a very weird career because he did a lot of television stuff, and then he made this really crappy movie with David Schwimmer called The Pallbearer, like in 2001.
He made that
and
movie?
then he basically got banished to television for like 7 years and came back with Cloverfield, and he's basically kind of like he's just risen his way up, since then. I think I sent out a tweet because I watched a lot of interviews. Listening to him talk about Batman is like listening to AJ Hinch talk about baseball, where it's like, wow, this guy so has a gauge on who these characters are, how you interpret them, and his vision, even if you don't disagree with it, like it makes sense when listening to him talk. So, I mean, I'm so amped for it. I got tickets next week. Next week's a busy week for me, man, because I'm going to Ann Arbor for the Michigan State game, and then we got the Batman on Wednesday, and then Michigan, because of a rescheduled game, has to play Iowa again on Thursday. So I will rest at some point next weekend, but after that, or before that, I make no guarantees.
So I look forward to seeing your review on Batman, and
Thank
of course, is there any other articles you wanted to pimp out? Because if we're gonna post your article on our podcast episode about the Juwan Howard article, which I thought was well done. Is there anything else that you have going on that you want to promote?
Well, I would say, and you brought it up at the beginning. I'm officially the third co-host on Lights Camera Barstool, which is a real genuine honor. I mean, the first thing I ever did in terms of content creation, ironically, wow, bringing this back around. When I was 12 years old, my first movie review I ever posted was for the movie Cloverfield, which I will share at some point when I'm not embarrassed by it. And now I'm co-hosting what I think is one of the coolest movie podcasts in the world. And, I'm making appearances on the Dozen Trivia show as well for Barstool, and just, follow what we do. I mean, I've been to New York. I've met these people. These guys they're a lot like us, man. They're grinders. They're working hard. So, give us a shot, and I appreciate that. But just, I mean, in general, people, you'll plug my Twitter and stuff. But as always, thank you. I mean, this is so, I just love what's been created of Tiger's Twitter and the podcasts that have come from it and the tweets that have come from it. And the fact that one of the questions I've been getting asked over the last year, and because now it's a thing, is what are you going to do when the Tigers get good? And my response is, I don't know, because it hasn't happened since we've started making content. But truly, I look forward to the day in which, we can be talking about playoff teams again. And I think it'll be great for the community. And I think it'll be great for your podcast and anyone out there who is making Tigers stuff. It's about time. So, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But I appreciate you guys having me on, man. It's always a lot of fun.
And Chris, again, like I said, there's a stigma about Barstool among people.
I get it. I get it. I understand.
I totally get it too. But at the same time, like, you're a normal guy like anybody else I've ever met. You're not fake. You're not disingenuous. And I really appreciate you taking the time out to come on with us. It's always fun. And honestly, I look forward to hopefully having a beer at the game this year, and maybe just maybe
we'll get there. Yeah, for sure. No, I'm trying to get down to as many as I can, man. It'll be a lot of fun. Yeah.
I was just to cut in here. Yeah, I was decided to check Baseball Reference for Batman. I figured at some point there would be a player nicknamed Batman, right? It's baseball,
right? Yeah. Is there nobody?
There are two players whose given names were Batman. Gil Batman, who played in the 1930s and 40s in the minors, and Jean Batman, who was a lefty pitcher from Venezuela. But one player named Bruce Wayne did come up.
That was my next question. Was there a
Oh.
Bruce Wayne in Major League Baseball?
Well, it's his middle name. His name is Bruce.
That counts. That counts. Yeah.
Bruce Wayne Ruffin, father of former Tigers pitcher Chance Ruffin.
Really?
Yeah. He was a decent pitcher for a while for the Phillies.
Yeah.
63 career saves.
Yeah.
There you go. So there you go. There's your Batman baseball tie-in again. Millionaires versus Billionaires and Bruce Ruffin.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah.
All right, Chris, man. We'll look forward to talking to you soon, man. Take it easy.
Of course, guys. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Yep.
All right, man. So we are having a couple questions that came in here based off what Walter asked about the draft. So we'll get to that because Chris Brown's been on the draft trail. So, oh yeah, that's right. I gotta take you off the stage, don't I? Well, wait. How's this work? Oh,
I'll bounce. I can do it myself, but I didn't want to. Yeah. Hey, great talking to you guys. All right.
All right.
Thanks, Chris.
You too, Chris. Thanks.
all right. I wasn't sure if he was gonna stick around, so that's my bad.
Mhm.
Yeah, I read that wrong. But yeah, we do have two questions we got to get to, and again, thanks to Chris. That I honestly like. I will admit that until you meet people and talk to people, you have to kind of not jump to conclusions about things and all. And I'm glad that it never came to that and everything. So,
Well, and one of the things that Chris mentioned, he's we also feel kind of similarly about. I mean, he described it as Tigers Twitter, but there's kind of like a Tigers blogosphere, Tigers Twitter, all that stuff. And one thing that's heartening to me and encouraging is to see younger people like Chris and Scott Bentley and like that whole crew who are, I don't know, in their early 20s or not even that old, who really loved the Tigers.
yeah.
It was almost like it became like a cool hipster thing to do because they were so bad that like, hey, we'll do this. But that's important to me. And I was talking to my brother about this the other day because, everybody talks about how the average age of baseball fans is so old now. And part of me just wonders if people just take to baseball as they get older. Like it's not something you particularly care about when you're a teenager. Because that's what happened with me. I cared about it when I was a kid. And then stopped caring altogether basically through my teens and then got back at it in my 20s. So I don't know. But that's just some thoughts there. And yeah, Chris is a good dude. We got two questions. One from Deadly Ninja Bees, of course.
Yeah.
He said, do the owners like baseball?
Well, you can make that debate, right? You can certainly have that discussion. I mean, and again, I'll go back to what I said earlier in the show. For guys who own teams to say we're out of ideas, give me a break. We look at the three of us. How many ideas can we generate in the next 5 minutes if we put our mind to it? And it's unbelievable. So when fans want to say that Rob Manfred hates baseball, it's probably not true, but he certainly deserves getting ripped on like that.
Yeah, the thing is that I find every time that we, like what I was mentioned earlier about the press or the public relations aspect of everything, how bad can you screw that up? But I just the regard, like you were saying earlier in the Discord channel, Chris, how are you going to pretend you're going to be ignorant? How are you going to let yourself get in that situation where you have people out, you basically call out people for saying anything opposing you, and we're upset how the play. Get you're not upset. You're not upset. Come on. It's just, man, I'm sick of it. I'm so sick of it. I'm so sick of. I'm sick of the players. I'm just sick of this whole entire narrative out there. It's just enough is enough. I get it. You have to make money. I get it, but. I don't even it's so who to blame or anything. I just want, like, it sounds selfish, but I just want this to end so I don't have to write articles about top 10 favorite moments of a kid's or top 10 Tiger favorite moments stuff. I want to write legitimate articles, and I wrote one today about Gabe Sequeira, the left-hander prospect. I love doing stuff like that. Give me more of that stuff. I want to write about actual things. I know I'm writing stuff right now, but good God, just
and the owners, they could have flipped at least some. I think more people always gravitate to the players nowadays than used to. I think in the old days, something the ownership had 50-50 in the public opinion with the players, but now it's not that way, and they could have gained so much favor, or at least some positivity if they would have come with good offers right away, instead of the pittance that they put up for the arbitration pool and the minor raises that they offered for the minimum salary. I mean, it was embarrassing. So, I mean, and not even to go to the table for 42 days. I mean, it's just been so mismanaged. It's just an ugly mark.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think something you just mentioned there, and we talked about it earlier, that the perception in general, I think for a long time, whenever there was any kind of labor issue, fans would just automatically assume the players were striking or the players wanted more. And I think part of it is the fans are a little bit more savvy now. Part of it is that they're being educated much better through, I think, writers who are a little bit more fair and balanced. And also just social media in general, is people like us who are, out there shouting about who's really at fault here. But I also think it's, back in what did Mike Ilitch buy the Tigers for? Like $83 million, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Ballpark.
And so back then you see a player who would get a contract for like $6-7 million a year or something like that. That would be like the top of the market. And you could look at that and say, wow, that's like a tenth of the value of the team. He's really super greedy. And now people see that these teams are worth $2.5 billion and the players are getting, the best players are getting $30 million a year. It's like, yeah, all right, we can see who's really making all the money here. It's not that hard.
Yeah.
So I don't know. But to answer his question, I do think the owners for the most part do like baseball. I think I do think there's a lot of people in it for the money, as it were, but I think they're more in it for the status and the prestige of having a professional sports team and whatever, all the things that brings you. And when you're a billionaire, you just expect to get things. And so I think there's a lot of that. I don't think, like Warren Buffett, I just suspect he doesn't really particularly care about baseball. He's a very rich man who could buy any baseball team he wanted, but I don't think billionaires just go and buy baseball teams for fun. They do it because they like baseball and they have billions of dollars and they can do it. But I'm sure there's one or two who doesn't particularly care. But so then he asked, he said, Gibby is in the show 22, the video game, as he's like a new superstar hidden character or something like that. Who will be the next Tiger on the cover?
No.
You know what? I'm gonna venture say it's gonna be Riley Green. I'm gonna drop it and say Riley Green. I mean, it's either Riley Green or Spencer Torkelson, but I'm gonna go with Riley Green first. He'll be the first one.
I don't know. Could Casey Mize have a Cy Young year and get into those kind of things?
I can see that too.
It's yeah, I would so a little inside gamer knowledge here. I don't know if it matters anymore, but they used to make those games in San Diego. That was where the development studio was. That's why they would have Matt Vasgersian do the announcing, because he was back then he was at Padres. So I'm going to go with California native Spencer Torkelson, even though he's from like north of San Francisco, just nowhere near San Diego. But I'll go with that. The odds are that there won't be any of him, though. I mean, there's only one player a year, and you kind of have to do something insane to get on there. Either Bryce Harper or Shohei Ohtani or Mike Trout. You got to go bonkers.
Okay, and so there even like what was it? I'm trying to think of. Fernando Tatis was on the cover, right? So that makes that right. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah,
San Diego guy, and obviously a superstar, but and yeah, the last thing that Deadly Ninja Bees asked is he said, should I cancel MLB TV and get MILB TV instead?
Don't cancel, but yes, buy the MILB TV. How's that?
Yeah, there you go. 100% worth it. 100%.
I've seen a lot of people say I'm canceling my MLB TV. I'm not going through that. I mean, why? I'm just going to get it. I'm going to keep it. If I cancel it, I just have to go through the process of getting it back.
But you didn't make a public post about it on social media, so it doesn't count. So you didn't officially cancel it.
Oh God, I know. But no, I'm not doing that. No way.
So you mentioned on the YouTube.
Javi Baez was on the. Let's see, was he on there? Right. I think you're right. It was probably after 2016.
2016, 2017, maybe 2018. Let's
see. Oh, 20. Javi Baez in the show 21. So just last year. What? No, was it?
I thought it was like 2018,
No,
2019.
2020. It looks like.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking at his card.
He's an exciting player in a big market. You can see it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, he was
Kind
on
of
the
a
cover.
swashbuckling way to him.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a cool cover too.
There's even like it was 2020. Okay, so to confirm everybody in there, but it was one of those things where I find that the cover, there's no jinx to it, so thankfully it's not like Madden.
I think the Madden jinx is the football jinx in that you're playing an incredibly physical sport that breaks everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So Walt had a really good question about any specific eyes on the draft as college baseball gets going, especially where the Tigers are picking 12th. So Chris, take this away because I'm still catching up on college baseball. I've been watching a lot of MLB or the minor league TV for stuff. So by all means, Chris Brown, have the floor.
Yeah, right up my alley. And I think you've watched some college baseball in your day too. Yeah, you're a fan. So yeah, actually, if you want to, Walter, you can go to Motor City Bengals. I wrote an article last week about the Tigers and the draft and college baseball specifically. But I guess just for a quick overview, kind of looking at this year's draft, it is one of the lightest years in memory in terms of college pitching. And that's not necessarily because of a lack of talent. It's just every talented pitcher has hurt. And the ones who remain are, you got Landon Sims from Mississippi State, who is outstanding. He's got a nasty fastball slider combination, but there's some pretty serious reliever risk there. He was a reliever up until this year. He made his first start just the other day, but he hasn't really shown a changeup. And, there's some violence to his delivery. So it's not the sort of guy. I mean, you could potentially argue taking him there at 12, sort of like the Angels took Sam Bachman last year at 9 or 10. But Sims' stuff isn't quite as electric as Bachman's. So I think for the most part, and there will be a college pitcher or two who jumps up and makes himself a top 15 pick probably. But I think we're probably going to rule out college pitching, at least as of right now, and we'll come back to that in a month or two. But this draft is really strong for college hitters and very strong for prep hitters too. At least at the top, there are 3 really good high school hitters that are probably going to go in the top 10, if not top 5. And Termar Johnson, who's a left-handed hitting second baseman, basically, who may have the best hit tool in the entire draft. And then you got Drew Jones, who, yes, he is the son of Andrew Jones, and it makes us all feel very, very old. But he kind of took over as the top prospect in the draft, at least to some people's rankings, like MLB Pipeline and Baseball America, because he's got a game that's a lot like his dad's. He looks like a potential Gold Glove center fielder with speed and power, and he can hit. So he's exciting. He's going to go top 5. And before that, everybody was talking about Elijah Green, who is this just insane mix of power and speed and physicality. He's like 6'3", 225.
Yep.
But 70 grade runner, if not an 80 grade runner, with 70, 80 raw power and a ridiculously strong arm. But with the questions with him, and he's the one who might fall. I still don't think he'll fall to 12 because the tools are just so loud. But there's some questioning his hit tool. And you can see videos on YouTube or recent ones on Twitter where you can see a little bit. He's got kind of what I would kind of describe as like a scoop to his swing. It's a little steep, and it seems like something that fastballs above the belt could really, really take advantage of. But again, the physical tools are crazy.
Yep.
But yeah, to specifically get to the players you asked about, yeah, the college players I'm looking at most right now are probably the outfielders. There are a couple college infielders. Jace Young, the younger brother of Josh Young, who just unfortunately went down with a shoulder injury. His younger brother plays for Texas Tech, I believe, and he's a second baseman, maybe a third baseman, but tons of power. Not tons of power, but like a lot of useful game power and a good hitter. He's probably a top 5, top 10 pick. And then you got Brooksley, I think his name is. Yeah,
Yes.
I want to call him Corey Lee, but that's the catcher. Brooks Lee is a kid who I think he was considered one of the best hitters on the West Coast when he was in high school. And normally those guys go in the first couple rounds, but his dad happens to be the coach at is it UC Irvine, one of those University of California offshoots. And he's played shortstop. There's some debate about that. He may have to move to second or third, but he's just a really, really good hitter with some potential pop from both sides of the plate. I believe he's a switch hitter. I could be wrong on that, but yeah, those guys will probably go before the Tigers draft. But then you've got some interesting outfield bats. In Gavin Cross is probably a corner outfielder, lefty from Virginia Tech, who I want to say he hit like over 400 for Team USA, the college team last year over the summer, which is usually one of the two big people like to see Cape Cod League performance and Team USA performance because they're using wood bats. They're competing against advanced competition. Yeah, and he demolished that, and so he's a guy who could be in that range. There's a guy named Chase DeLauder from James Madison who was getting. Some people compare him. Yeah, check out the article. Okay. Oh, yeah. I'm talking too much for Walter. He's going to check out the article. But let me just finish my thoughts. Yeah, Chase DeLauder is like this really, really tooled up, like 6'4", 235-pound center fielder that played really well in the Cape Cod League. Now he had a rough first weekend against Florida State. He went like 2 for 14 with like 8 strikeouts. But he's a guy some people thought could go first overall. The one I kind of targeted for the Tigers in the article was Brock Jones, who plays at Stanford, which is, of course, where AJ Hinch went, right?
Yep, that's correct.
And he is a former safety for the Stanford football team who started focusing on football or baseball last year. He plays center field for them. He had, I want to say, 18, 19 home runs and double-digit steals. And yeah, he's just one of those kind of rare, pretty tooled up college outfielders who might be there for him at 12. And I compared him a little bit to Kirk Gibson mostly because the last time the Tigers picked 12th, the only time they picked 12th, they picked Kirk Gibson. So I thought, hey, well, that's fun. But he's not as big or as insanely tooled up as Kirk Gibson was. And I don't know if people quite realize what Kirk Gibson had going for him. He was some people had legitimate 80 grade speed and 80 grade power on his scouting reports back when he was a prospect. So,
yeah, you know what? Every time when they find those old prospect reports from players from the previous decades, it blows my mind because some of the great grades they got right or they got wrong, or about somebody that they, for example, somebody like Ricky Barlow, Tigers pick in 1981, who was picked 17th overall out of Texas, and just when you see his walk numbers and you're just like, well, what happened? And when it is quite, scouting is baseball scouting to me, it takes it takes more than skill, it takes some luck too, because I don't know, I just applaud those guys who go out on the road, and I've seen them firsthand. It's just a bow, because honestly you see a guy on a Friday night go and strike out 16 or 17 batters, and then next week and get lit up, but by then you're gone. And that's why I always the cross-checking is so important, and getting the little details down and making sure you stay for enough games is something I learned from James Shipman. So,
guy I'm looking for this year, college-wise, I want to see if he has another gear that he was projected to have and he hasn't shown yet, and that's Carter Young in Vanderbilt. Because I love Vanderbilt guys. He didn't quite play to the level I think people expected last year, but the guy's got a lot of talent. You can see that. So he's someone I think could play his way into that top 15 for the draft. And again, the nice thing about Vanderbilt is you get a lot of chances to see them for the most part. And
yeah, that's a good call. He was I think he's also a switch hitter, right?
Yeah.
And he's got plenty of power, and he's a legit shortstop. He'll stick at shortstop. The only question with him is hitting and strikeouts. But yeah, I mean, if he proves he can hit this year and puts up a decent average, then he's definitely going to climb up there, because that's a premium defensive player.
And then the Michigan outfielder was off to a nice start. Clark Elliott.
Yep.
Yeah. I'm interested. He's looked really good. I watched some of the video there. I'm hopeful to see more of him as we go through the year, and I believe he's draft eligible. Am I wrong about that?
No, he is. And Michigan has proven to be a pretty good developmental program. It was beyond just Chris Fetter. They've got some good stuff going on there. And Clark Elliott won the Cape Cod League batting title. Yep. I think he hit 344 or 343.
He did. He crushed it there. Yeah. And so I don't know if he plays his way into the top half of the first round, but I think there's a chance of that anyway.
Yeah, and then the one thing we didn't discuss, and we don't really need to, is it's a very deep and talented high school pitching crop. I don't know if the Tigers would go back-to-back high school pitchers in the first round. But it may be that when they're picking at 12, the most talented players at that spot might be either a high school pitcher or one of the injured college starters. So we'll see.
Then Judd Fabian is the other. What does he do coming back? Kind of a controversial guy. But if he kind of turns it around, he even with a kind of a crappy year, he got drafted fairly high. So now he's back in school. Kind of a fun, interesting story, if nothing else.
Yeah, that's another one where the contact and the strikeouts are the main issue, and scouts want to see him turn that around.
Yeah, hopefully he'll get the money that he wasn't an issue of money too, right? That he wanted to get a little more.
He wanted more, yeah. Despite all the Ks, he thought he deserved it. So we'll see.
Yeah, no, we all know the K percentages across the board are high, but yeah, if they saw something they didn't like, then it is what it is. So
the one other thing I should have mentioned that I forgot to was it's an unusually strong at the top catching crop. I don't know if you want to spend a top 15 pick on a college catcher that's not going to be, Adley Rutschman or Joey Bart or whatever, although Joey Bart hasn't been great, and they have Dylan Dingler, but it may be again where the best player available might be Kevin Parada, who's a catcher for Georgia Tech. You got Daniel Susak, whose older brother, Andrew, I think caught for the Giants for several years. And I think he has another brother who might be a pitcher. And then you got two kids from Mississippi, and the Tigers like taking their catchers from Mississippi. You got Hayden Dunhurst and Tanner Allen from Mississippi State, I believe, and they're both, more defense first, but interesting catchers. So, yeah, it'll be fun to watch this year. And as always, and you mentioned Judd Fabian, he's a great example of a guy. People projected him to possibly go first overall, top 5 last year. He was a legitimate option for the Tigers at the 3rd pick, and he just struggled so mightily that he ended up going to the Red Sox in the 2nd round. And as you said, he probably thought of himself as a top 10 pick, and so he went back and tried to prove it. And we'll probably see that again this year. Mm-hmm. And then there's Kumar Rocker is still out there. Who knows what he's going to do to prepare for the draft. He's not pitching for Vanderbilt, but maybe he'll go to Indy ball or do some showcases.
That, to me, sign me up right now. If he's there at 12, take him. Boom, done. Let's go. I've always been a big Kumar guy.
On that rate, though, we will be talking more college baseball if there's no baseball. So we'll find out in a couple days as the lockout. Essentially, the owners basically have said, if we don't come to an agreement by the 28th, we're going to be canceling games and not making them up. So we'll see what happens here in the next couple days. We hope there will be the next time we're on, which will be in March, that there is baseball. We all want baseball. And in my tiredness when I was talking about the whole writing, the thing is, writing 20 articles a month, you gotta rack your brain. You really have to rack your brain. And if I get substance for it, great. That's fantastic. I can get a lot of that out, but it does allow, like I said, it allows the creativity to happen. And again, I would writing the rotation pieces have been fun. Chris is writing the starting lineups for each affiliate, which is great. And I'll give credit to Alan, who said he wanted to do an article on replacement Tigers. So Tony the Tiger, Tiger Woods. That was a good spin. So, and one last thing I want to mention, Gavin, who has been writing for us a little while, got it. He's now the new fan-sided site expert for Georgia Tech. And I know he was at Michigan State, so that's pretty cool for him, and congratulations to him. And pass that along. Of course, if you have not gotten your now, I know Uper's gotten his shirt. The Emily Walden's, she did a she did a top 10 Tigers prospect with her podcast with Kyle Glazer. So you want to check that out after you check ours out, of course. And yeah, that's all we got. So unless I'm missing something else, Chris.
No, I'm we're not that far away from writing articles about 5 Dodgers to take after Russia nukes LA.
Oh man.
Well, that's what we got. I mean, you got to manufacture some baseball news. So
yeah, I mean, I gotta say, it is depressing. There's a lot of stuff going on that's depressing, and it's just
no question about it.
What I saw today with the Applebee's commercial during the CNN as they did have you seen this, Uper?
Yeah.
Have you heard this? Did you see that?
Yeah, I saw it. There's bombing and mayhem on the left, and Applebee's desserts on the right. Unbelievable.
By the way, I had that stupid song stuck in my head. I hate that song so much. It is okay. If you like country, music's subjective. Okay, music's subjective. If you like music, whatever, fine. That song is just literally come on. I mean, it's just like let me write my own version of it here. Cold Coke Zero on a Friday night. Jogging pants that feel just right. Let me turn my podcast up.
I had not heard that song until that commercial. So really? I don't go places where there's music.
I envy you, Chris. Uber, how does he luck that out? How'd you luck out like that, Chris?
That is very lucky.
I don't know.
Considering where you live, come on. How'd you not hear that song?
I don't go. Maybe I have, and I just never registered to me. I thought it was like the song for the commercial. But the one thing I want to say though is that, and it's a feeling I always get, and I don't necessarily want to express it on Twitter because whatever.
Yeah.
But just even in my lifetime, we've already lived through some awful things, and I just always remember that we always get through them. It just I mean, it's scary at times, and I'm sure I told this story before, but on 9/11, so 9/11 happened 3 days before my 21st birthday. I was a college student. It was scary. You felt like the world was changing. The next month there were anthrax attacks. It just felt like the world was collapsing. Next couple of years, the economy collapsed. But I called my dad on 9/11, and I said, "Hey, yeah, there's terrorist attacks. They're blowing up everything." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, that's awful. Did the furnace guy call?" And I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, the furnace guy was supposed to come." I'm like, "Oh, all right." And then I remember, you know what? Okay, so he lived through JFK getting killed, Martin Luther King being killed, Vietnam, Nixon, Watergate, everything.
Sure.
And I was a high schooler when Oklahoma City happened. The first World Trade Center attack happened. My grandparents lived through World War II. I've been through 3 recessions already, and I'm 41. So yeah, it just always, I think we and everybody has a right to be upset about what's happening right now and feel bad about it and be scared. But I kind of at the point now where I just know that we'll eventually get through it. And, there may be some bad times, but we'll stick around and talk about baseball. So I don't think it'll be too bad for us. Hopefully.
Yeah. Our job is, we are really is talking baseball. It's fun to do. And hopefully with more Patreon subscribers, of course. And I'm pushing that because we're going to a lot of minor league games this year. We're actually getting all our press credentials set up in a row. We got ducks in a row. I ordered my pocket radar yesterday, so I'll have a radar gun. And Walter, you're the man, because thank you for understanding how bad that song is. Country music is not what it used to be. Quite frankly, I never was I understand old country like Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson, but all these songs sound the same. Something about a Friday night football game, beer, and it's so bad. It's so there was I forgot the name of the website, but there's some website that took all the country lyrics and they're the 10 same words over and over again. There's no originality. And how many bands do I need to have the borders of state? Do I need where's the Michigan, Ohio, Indiana line band, or how about the New Jersey Turnpike band or something? Again, These people are much more talented than me, and they can play an instrument and making money. I'm not jealous of it. I just don't get it. And I mean, I'm that old man yelling at the cloud thing or whatever. But I was listening to trap music earlier, so I'm not that unhip as of yet. So if you've ever seen the Kids in the Hall, he's hip, he's young, he's 40 skit, I'm right there.
I always surprise people when I tell them I still listen to top 40 music. That's almost all I listen to. I try not to live in the past. I always tell people the past is overrated. At least we overrate the past quite a bit, you know. But I can't get into the new country music either. That's one place where if I do dabble in country music, as you mentioned, I'll listen to the old stuff like Waylon Jennings or Johnny Cash. But otherwise, the new stuff has no interest for me.
Walter wanted to check out Charlie Crockett and Culture Wall. So I'll definitely Well, I don't like what I don't like when people do is when somebody likes a certain music taste and just makes fun of them for it. That's ridiculous. If you like something, hey, you know, the police have been in my favorite band list for the last 7 years on Spotify. I still listen to the same songs. We all like our stuff. Each their own. It doesn't matter. I just, like I said, the state line band thing and just, yeah. Anyway. All right. No more tangents. We're out of here. And hopefully, like we said, there's baseball next week to talk about. If not, there is 40 something odd days until opening season starts in Erie and Toledo and across the minor league system. And March 10th is when minor league camp officially starts. Chris, is that right?
I believe so. Yeah, or it was 10th, 14th. I don't remember the exact date, but you know, it probably won't be a whole heck of a lot different than what they're doing now. I think they'll just have some actual games.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm just looking forward to seeing it out there. So until next time, we'll see you next. Well, try that again. I can edit this out later on the audio portion, but for all of us here,
See ya.
all right. See you. We'll see you next week. Have a good week, everybody.